a quick ceremony to celebrate not only our new teaching hires for this year, but also our teachers who have been recognized with tenure last year who were unable to celebrate due to COVID restrictions. So it was nice to spend a half hour with them, get to hear about the impact they're making on students, and just with the transition time there, we're running a little bit late. So thank you for your patience. Our agenda is going to look a little bit different than how it's written. So we have our routine items that we're going to go through first rather quickly, as we always do. And then I'm going to make a motion to, or entertain a motion, I should say, to amend the agenda to allow for our superintendent's update and a presentation that we have planned tonight to go on early so our students can get home instead of being here till 8:30 at night. So with that, let me get to the right spot here. As I mentioned, the first item on our agenda is the approval of our routine items. So you'll see in your agenda the committee meetings from September 14th, the committee meetings on special education for the dates in September listed, and also the minutes for the committee on preschool education, which it looks like there are no dates. So you can scrap number 3. If there are no conversation on those 2 items, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Amanda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great, that will carry. And we also need a motion to approve the minutes. I'm sorry, I don't know if this is right. It says see above, but it says today's date. Okay, so we'll fix that moving forward. And before we turn it over to our presenters, are there any public comments this evening? No? Okay, great. So all that being said, I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda to move the superintendent's report up to number 4 on our agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Crystal. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Heidi. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, great. That will carry. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ward and Mr. Whitty and Mr. Strong.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say that I am deferring to Mr. Whitty and Mr. Strong, and we do have the presentation ready to roll, but I want to say it's going to be the best part of our meeting tonight. It was great seeing the staff, and I totally want to acknowledge them for being here, but it's always great when we can hear directly from our students at these meetings. So thank you for being here. I can't wait to hear what you have to say, and really appreciate it again. And Mr. Whitty's been talking about how he was here to get cupcakes for the students. So if you don't get a cupcake out of this thing, he definitely owes you guys big time, so make sure you do. So I'll turn it over. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, and thank you for the hype. I appreciate it. It's a high bar. So first of all, I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come out and to present to you some of the great work that's happening in the middle school right now. This is one of many great things that are currently in place, and it's taken some time to get here, so it's some work that we're really proud of. It's our No Place for Hate organization. A group that kind of came together, and I'll talk a little bit about the history of it in a minute, but and saw some work through that was really important, and we saw a need for it. So you probably know me, William Whitty, the building principal. I brought today with me Mr. Strong, Miss Ross, and Miss Diamond, and also our student representation, which is Alex Hogan, Stephen Potman, Greta Anjukovics, and sorry about that, Alex Landsman. So let me kind of describe to you some of their roles. So our teacher roles are one of many, 18 in fact. The students are one of a great deal more. Currently we're in the, I believe, the 60 range. We look to expand that with our 6th grade group, but at this point you'll hear more about that within the program here. And then Mr. Strong. Mr. Strong came into us, and I'm going to speak a little bit on his behalf here. He came, was an addition to the middle school as an assistant principal in, is it January? Of last year, January of last year, and this work is a testament to everything that he put into the middle school to date. So this should really truly be a reflection of the work that he's done, and it's only a small piece of the great stuff that he brings to the middle school on a daily basis. And I probably don't say it enough, but thank you for seeing the work through, and students and staff, thank you as well. I really appreciate it. So as I said, in 2018, 2019 was my first year as an assistant principal in the middle school. Both Mr. Tizanos and I kind of came together and thought about a vision of kind of bringing in No Place for Hate. There was certainly a need for it. We saw that over a short period of time. I think it was by November when we started to see the uptick in behaviors. We noticed that it was a lot about peer conflict, and some of the areas that was in need. We could easily fit this program into place and chip away at it and take a more proactive approach towards student management and kind of creating that diversity, equity, and equality that you're probably hearing about now, as I'm hearing about, is this new kind of direction initiative that the state is going in. So this program fits nicely into that to some degree. It doesn't totally fulfill it, but as I learn more about it, I think that we'll see this program kind of deviate and take direction based upon that. So as of 2019, 2020, I can proudly say, due to the work of this group and many more, that we were able to achieve accreditation. So we'll get into a little bit of that.
What is No Place for Hate? Making a difference for 35 years. The origins of ADL's anti-bias programs date back to 1985, when ADL and WCVB-TV in Boston initiated the A World of Difference campaign, a series of education and medium-driven programs designed to combat prejudice and create effective tools to address the issues in the classroom and community.
Thank you, Greta. So when I took this program over from Mr. Whitty, we discussed the why. And one of the most important things about middle school is that these are their formative years developmentally. They go from assimilating with their family to now assimilating with friends and groups at school. So it's imperative that we provide positive programs for them, not only our athletics and our arts, and some of those that are more well-known, but through positive behavior programs such as No Place for Hate. So we feel it's important to explicitly teach about racism, about anti-bias, tolerance, and inclusivity. And this is what this program allows. And it was set in place by the Anti-Defamation League, and working with them has given us a toolkit, if you will, that we provide the manpower to push this message out. And that's the why of our group for No Place for Hate.
All right, so I want you to take a look at these 51 names on the board. These are current 7th and 8th graders that make up our No Place for Hate student involvement. This does not include the 6th graders that have not received the ticket that Stephen is going to reference later. But all of these students have identified different areas of need to make our school an inclusive environment for everyone. So we've been really working with our students to come up with different activities. They are leading the conversations in our classrooms when we are using our SEL time to complete these activities. Total leaders in our classroom, absolutely amazing. And not only do we have awesome students, but we also have some dedicated faculty and staff and administration that really want to make our community, our schools, a safe, thriving environment for our students. So yes, it takes students, but it also takes dedicated faculty and staff as well.
What students gain? Students feel heard and understood at school by teachers and classmates. Lead the program, connect with friends and classmates in an engaging way, develop a greater respect for differences.
So basically, this program gives support and materials to address the challenging topics that we face in our middle school. It also provides a platform to teach anti-bias and really gives that united front. In addition, creating the school culture where all students can thrive and survive. And thrive, of course, survive. And then just overall, this program really has a pretty powerful impact on our student body.
How we grow. Every fall, we induct new members into the group by giving them the golden ticket. During lunch, our 7th and 8th grade members deliver an induction certificate to the 6th graders. What do? We meet monthly to develop lessons to bring to our classmates during our advisory or SEL period. And we complete 3 school-wide activities a year for accreditation. And these are the t-shirts we wear when we have meetings and lessons.
An example of an activity that we do in No Place for Hate was, as an entire school, we watched the movie Remember the Titans. After watching the movie, every student answered and discussed some important questions that the movie provided examples of, such as, have you ever hurt someone's feelings, whether it was on purpose or by accident? Have you been in a situation where you had to work with someone different than you? Also, based off the interactions from the movie, is racism an issue in our school? Finally, have you ever had the courage to stand up for someone being mistreated?
So our first school-wide activity this year is going to be our Say Boo to Bullying campaign. This is a pretty positive activity that students love to do each year, at least for the past 10 years I can speak to, that we've been doing this activity. Students, really look forward to it. They start out the activity as a 2-part lesson by watching a video with our trait of tolerance, and they will then engage in a discussion with guided prompts to talk about that theme. The second part, they're going to create Boo Pops, as you can see in the picture above. It's a Tootsie Pop wrapped in a tissue to represent a ghost, and then attached to that will be a little positive message that they will then disperse to either peers or members of the middle school to really promote and spread awareness of our theme.
I want to give a lot of credit to our students and our faculty and staff that participate in No Place for Hate. It's through their volunteerism that we were able to gain accreditation in the 2021 school year. Despite going through a pandemic and only having our students 2 days a week in person, they were still able to persevere and accomplish this. And because of their efforts, we have this beautiful banner that we're going to display in our cafeteria. And then each year, as we go along, we want to ring the cafeteria with our No Place for Hate accreditation banners to let everyone know what we represent as the Hudson Falls Middle School. And our last slide here is of Mr. Whitty and I holding it up in our lobby.
Questions? You gotta have some.
First, I just want to thank our presenters. You guys did a great job tonight, so thank you for coming in and, again, taking time out of your busy nights, and really appreciate your comments and your participation in this really cool program. Mr. Whitty, is No Place for Hate only a middle school program, or are there plans to cascade this through the rest of the district?
So it's a great question. Actually, we sent up a group of very capable, thriving 9th graders into the high school this year, so I could fully see those kids participating, volunteering to come out and dedicate the time to bringing it to the high school as well. I can't speak enough about the program, even if it was done in isolation, just with the kids that you bring in, and that's some awareness. That's a movement in the right direction. But this is something that, if done well, and not interrupted by COVID the way we had in 18-19 there, it's a great opportunity for everybody in the district. So I don't foresee it being restricted there either. I believe there's probably literature and programming for years below that as well, but I can't speak to that. I do know for a fact that it is a high school program.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Whitty, I remember when you first came in to talk to the board about bringing this to the school. Yeah. So I'm really excited and proud of how far it's come in that short time. So thank you for doing all that, and thank you to the kids for presenting, and the staff as well. Thank you, guys.
I'm kind of a sidecar to it. I'm going to say it again. Mr. Strong and his work and organization on seeing the planning of about a year and a half and just seeing that work through in a very short time. When he came in last year, it was the right guy to do the work and make sure it was seen through. So, thank you.
Go ahead, Heidi.
So my question is for you students. We've had 2 crazy years and a lot of bickering adults all around. So do you feel like this program helps you have conversations about those hard topics that even sometimes grown-ups have a hard time talking about?
Heads nodding.
Greta?
She looks mortified. She looks mortified over it.
Yes.
Thank you.
The students who had the opportunity to discuss the lessons in small groups prior to us rolling them out to the whole school. So they'll sit in a pod of 3 or 4 students along with an adult, one of our adult teachers, and they'll develop questions and have some of those difficult conversations on their own in small groups. So that's very powerful for them.
I think that's a super good skill for when you guys grow up and go into life. So wicked cool.
Yeah.
So I might have told this story before, but I just want to make a quick comment about Mr. Whitty's class. In 1920, when they started this work, they didn't get to finish it because March 2020 came along and put an end to everything. Sometime that spring, the ADL said, you didn't get there, but you can have your banner. This has been a crazy year, you're welcome to the banner. And Mr. Whitty said, no, we want to hurry up. We went back to the Auditor Report next school. Classic.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one more question for the students. Does anybody want an extra cupcake? Somebody take it. If you got like a sibling at home, or if you just want to
there's a
double
couple
up, here it is.
There it is. Yeah.
Yes.
We'd love to get,
Greta's like, I'll respond to that.
Thank you for seeing my promise.
there's a bunch out there. Dude, can we get a quick, you okay if I
Take it home to your dad.
Yeah.
Because he's a dentist, like, tell him this is from us.
Can I get a quick photo of the whole group?
Here, kids, come on over here, grab the banner, we'll take this photo.
Please.
This reward here.
Great job, guys.
For my brother, I have 3 brothers.
Where do you want?
I think we're good right here. Yeah, we'll see how the lighting works. I got a couple of the students while I was speaking, so. We're gonna turn it so it's.
We have our screens, okay?
This is awesome. Very cool. You ready? Can't tell if we're smiling because of the mask. Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to have you here. As always, you're welcome to stay for the whole meeting. You're also welcome to grab cupcakes and go home. But thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate it very much. Very cool.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. In the presentation, we'll just flip up a couple. So, yeah, you don't mind. So I didn't put a ton of items together because I knew we had the presentation from the students, and that's what's more important tonight, I think, especially we're a month into school. It's great to hear from students, especially about a program like No Place for Hate. And thanks again to the students who are rushing out to grab the cupcakes and go home, so good for them. Just a couple of things, and I have been doing Friday videos. I know the board knows that, and I'm guessing some of the folks in the audience know that. But I wanted to make sure that if we had an audience online tonight, that I was able to say that we are doing Friday videos and short newsletters trying to provide information to parents and guardians and family and staff members about things that are going on in the district. And one that I wanted to talk about again tonight, just briefly, it won't be long, are the quarantine rules, because we keep getting questions about the quarantine rules. And I think it's worthwhile to try to provide information, at least a piece of the information as much as we can, in every venue that we have an opportunity to talk to anybody from the public. So I had one example that I used in my video last week was about the transportation quarantine, because that's where one of the places where we're most vulnerable here as a school district. That's really every school district. It's transportation and it's during meals. So this one that's up there, this document comes to us from the Washington County Department of Health, and actually it's being used by multiple county departments of health in our area. And I just want to show you, if you look at that, the person in red is the positive on that bus. And again, I'm not trying to be redundant, but it is the same one I talked about in my video last week. Just as a demonstration so you can see what happens. That one person in red, it tests positive for COVID-19, and those other 17 in orange are quarantined. Based on the algorithm, that diagram provided by the county. That's frustrating for a lot of people, including us here at school, parents at home, and everybody between school and home, to have that number happen. I just want to let it be known that that's not a choice that the Hudson Falls School District has. Those are the rules that we're required to follow, and we are frustrated. What I have been doing is advocating. We have meetings with the county weekly, have been advocating to try to get that circle on the bus to shrink some. That's a pretty large circle. So far, Washington County is not there yet, although they understand why we're asking. They're looking at some guidance from the CDC. That's where this algorithm, this diagram, not the diagram, but the construction diagram comes from guidance from the CDC. There's similar diagrams for classrooms, similar diagrams for cafeterias, similar diagrams for other areas, and there's also flow charts that we have to go through. So that's the type of work that our nurses are doing and some of our clerical staff are helping with. That work goes on 7 days a week for our staff members and really all hours of the night. So we've got nurses and clerical staff that are working on Saturdays, Sundays, yesterday, Columbus Day, to do the tracing and provide the information to the county departments of health. There is no rest for the weary. So I just want to put that out there and recognize those people, but I mostly wanted to share one of those diagrams during our public meeting with anybody who's watching out there who's in attendance, just to say, we understand very much that it's frustrating. I wish that circle could be much smaller, but right now that is what we had to work with, and we're really doing our best to provide accurate information to the county. And we're also doing our best here at the school district to inform people very quickly. That's another spot that's causing concern for residents and parents and guardians, that they're hearing from the school district on this day, and they might not hear from the county for 8 to 10 to 12 days. That's not because the school is doing anything wrong, nor is it because the county is doing anything wrong. It's just that we've been able to keep up with everything because we're working 7 days a week, more hours a day than I would like to ask anybody to work, but they're doing it. And the county is slightly overwhelmed, and so they're doing the best they can. They use a contact tracing service. They don't do all the tracing themselves. So they're slightly behind. I would say greater than slightly behind. So you might get a call from the school saying we have to exclude your child from school. You'll be getting a call from a contact tracer at some point from the county, and you might not get that call from the county for 8 to 10 to 12 days, depending on the volume that the county's taking in. Again, not because they're trying not to get a hold of people, just because they have a large area to cover and a small staff to do it with. So just wanted to share that as one of my bullet points this evening.
Dan, I know this only applies to a small percentage of students, but in this same model, if one of those students is over 12 and fully quarantined, are they still, fully vaccinated, are they still quarantined with county DOH?
Yeah, no, so if they're vaccinated, they go to the symptomatic questions. And so we're even helping the county with those because we're doing the symptomatic screening ourselves in a lot of cases. Not every single case are we doing so. That was how we were able to keep more students out of quarantine. We started doing that back even before the school year started because we had, at that point, it was just our athletic teams that were practicing. So we were going through all the asymptomatic folks. We were looking to see if they were vaccinated or not. And there's very specific questions. I forget how many, if there's 12 or 14 specific questions the county requires us to ask. And if a person can answer no to all of those and they're fully vaccinated, they're allowing us to not put them on the list of close contacts.
Okay, thank you.
I lost my bullet list. Progress to tenure reports. So something a little bit different for us. We're trying to do a different process when talking about progress towards tenure for anybody whose job leads to tenure. So you're going to be seeing in the executive session for our December meeting, we're going to have the principals coming back to talk about their individuals who are up for tenure or who are not tenured yet. This will give you, the board, an opportunity to hear about these individuals multiple times prior to the year in which you have to make a decision on tenure based on the superintendent's recommendation. There's a lot of good reasons to do this. Mainly it's so you have plenty of opportunities to ask questions and to hear about the great work that's being done or any concerns that might be had inside of the executive session, because that's the appropriate place to do so for these types of personnel decisions. So you've heard about an employee 3-4 times before we get to that final year where we're talking about the tenure decision. So it gives us a better chance to flesh it out for you. It gives our administrators a better chance to communicate with me about it and with Mike about the progress towards tenure. So you'll see the first set of those in December. So you'll see the principals back here again. It'll be the first time for the Hudson Falls principals doing that here. So we're going to take them through. They'll have some documentation and they'll kind of have a template to use to provide those presentations to the board. So I just wanted to put that on your radar and let you know that that's coming. I will be doing the same for any administrators who are non-tenured as well. So I'll be following a similar pattern. So you same reasons, right? So we have plenty of opportunities to ask questions. So when it comes time for that tenure decision, you all feel like you have all the information you need to have to vote on that appropriately. So it's all about no surprises, right? Let's work together and let's do it right. So that's what that is about. The Banquet School Boards Association meeting, that's tomorrow, that's Thursday. I keep saying tomorrow. That's Thursday. They moved it up to 5:45 for an arrival time. The Commissioner of Education will be there. The folks who are going already replied to Kelly. And if you get there a little bit early, I'll be happy to be there to meet up with you and have a conversation about the session. But again, to have access to the Commissioner, that's a great opportunity for us. I will tell you that there's some other events in the area the Commissioner will be at. I have been asked to be a part of those sessions as well. So I'll be happy to report back on that at next month's meeting. This is the annual food drive for the Untitled School Boards Association. So if you have access to non-perishable goods, if we bring them there, they'd love to have them. I can get out myself to a grocery store this weekend and got a case of ravioli and mac and cheese, which I'll be bringing. So I've got us covered, but if you've got more, we know there's great need in our BOCES area. So whatever we can provide, that would be great. So I look forward to seeing the folks that were able to come there. And it's going to be a nice session. I'm glad that we're able to get back in person for some of those again after the last 18 months or so. And then last, but certainly not least, October is Board of Education Appreciation Month. Being a board member, I've never been a board member, but I've sat with a few boards. It can be a thankless job. It's kind of like the sign down to the fire department. Long hours, no pay, we'll train, right? It's the same type of service that you folks are providing. We have some gifts for you that will be coming. They're student-created gifts. Their timetable ran a little bit short, so they'll be ready for our November meeting. But there's a lot of cupcakes left over. So we'll say the cupcakes were also for the board. But I do want to thank you all. I realize we haven't worked together that much, but I appreciate the work that you do put in. Our school district appreciates the work you put in, and we know that it can be long hours, and there's a lot of tough decisions. And I hope that you get to see the students come and talk tonight. Those are the rewards you get. And one of the things you'll hear me talk about as we get closer, if you have the opportunity to be at graduation, that is a culmination of all the hard work that you folks are putting in. And you can get out there and see that event. That will hit you in the heart if you haven't seen it recently. So you'll hear me talk about that. But thank you for your efforts, and happy October Board Appreciation Month. We look forward to getting you your gifts next month.
Great.
That's what I have. Oh, did I have one more? Oh, so board pictures, sorry, I almost forgot. Board pictures are next month at 6:30, so they come to us to take those photos. So please be ready to roll in the attire you want to be in. I think all the ones I've seen, men wearing shirt and tie and jacket, and women wearing in dress type clothes. So please be ready. If you have specific questions about it, you can aim those at Kelly. She'd be happy to answer them for us. But that's one thing you need to know. A little bit early next month, we want to get the photos taken. So we have all your official photos updated on the website.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions for Dan? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Ward. All right, so jumping back to what will now be the fifth item on our agenda, the President's Report. So there's not much here, and what is here should be very much review for you guys at this point. So you'll see the mission, vision, values work that we've done, that we've actually been working on since, I believe, January of last year with the board retreat that we conducted with Dr. Hunter. And then as a follow-up, the board retreat that we conducted in late August with Mr. Ward. So my understanding is that this document has since been shared with the appropriate associations, and there's no additional changes from when you guys have seen this last. So with that being said, if there's no additional conversation on it, I would entertain a motion to approve the new mission statement, the vision statement, and the values that we've worked on.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. In a second.
Second.
I'm sorry, thank you, Crystal. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great, that will carry. Moving into the committee section of our agenda, first up we have personnel. Mr. LePan's not able to be here this evening due to a conflict in the school district that he works in, but not a whole lot to call out here on the October personnel agenda. You'll see some resignations, a handful of appointments, and there's a lot of I'll say adjustments to some of the appointments to extracurriculars and lunch duty and all of those different things as the district kind of continues to react to, I'm guessing, some of the strains that COVID has placed on some of those different areas. You'll see a number of leave requests, both maternity leaves and unpaid personal leaves there as well. And as you guys know, personnel is done by consent. So, Dan, do you have anything additional that you want to call out to the group that they should know about on personnel?
No, I do not.
Okay. Any questions or additional comments on personnel?
Actually, I will say one thing. So there's been some questions about the number of extracurricular opportunities, and just so it's part of our public record. The reason for that is we have some additional funding streams this year. We have the ARP funds. So we had that extra layer on top of there. So what is occurring with those is the requests are going to Mr. DiCaprio, and we're coding them to either the regular budgets and normal that we have every single year. We have some that are run through grants, and now we have an additional layer that are going through our ARP funds to provide for students. So that's why throughout the year you're going to see some more, but additionally, most of the additions are happening now so we can get them up and running for students. But you're going to see some more as we go throughout the year.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Amanda.
A few more questions that I had emailed, but I don't know because I responded to the one you had sent, so I don't know if you saw it, but with the period zero training at the high school,
Yep.
Is that starting ASAP? What are the hours? Is it open to all students, all grades, just athletes? I'm super excited about it, but I just don't know any of the details.
Yeah, so the plan for that to be open to a group large enough to be safe. We don't know how many kids are going to want to come, but they're looking to start it soon, yes.
Okay. Just athletes or any students?
Any student.
Grades 9 through 12?
Correct. Yeah.
Do you know timing?
So it's before school, so I don't know the start time. We're looking at 1 hour before school, so we're talking about 6.
0 is typically 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so somewhere between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, I think is what the plan is. I don't have, we're trying to see how many students we have and then adjust accordingly.
So has it been put out to the...
Has not yet. Not widespread put out. There's been conversation to see if students would be interested in it before we would allow an advisor to send in paperwork for it.
Mm-hmm.
So now once we have an advisor, we'll get it advertised around the school for people to sign up to be a part of.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Amanda and Dan. Any additional questions on personnel? Tim, you're good. I couldn't tell. I saw you move your hand, but I couldn't tell if it was up. Okay. Okay, so personnel is done by consent, so if there's nothing further, those items will carry. Next up is our athletics report. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to take us through our athletic committee meeting.
So I'll do my best to read my chicken scratch here. You know, we changed the date, so it's a little bit, my memory's going a little bit. But anyways, we had 3 items on the agenda. AD Carpenter was discussing the fall sports. I wanted to congratulate the golf team. They were the Foothills champions. We were second place for sectionals, and we had 2 individuals qualify for states, Ben Schwartz and Noah Tyler. Congratulations to them. The other thing we had discussed was invitational for game day cheer. There was a possibility of them going to 2 locations. One was in Arlington, and that was for a regionals competition. And the other one was in a Binghamton area for the same type of competition. And at this point, have they really decided on doing any of those, Dan?
I have not, and the reason for trying to find competition is if you have participated in enough competitions, you aren't allowed to be in sectionals. So they've got to meet the representation rules. They've got to find some competitions to be in, or they cannot be in sectionals because they haven't been in enough competitions to qualify.
Okay.
There's not a lot of local ones happening.
Thank you. The second thing for the fall sports, or the third thing, logistics have been extremely difficult. Mr. Carpenter has indicated that we've had to delay or push some trips. Other schools have not been so lucky with that, with the COVID issues. Officials are very sparse as far as fulfilling modified and JV sports, and they're using them mostly for the varsity sports. So that's been extremely difficult for logistics. The other thing we had discussed, open gyms. There was a couple of requests to start doing open gyms for basketball. At this point, it's been determined that we're holding off again because of the COVID issues. Mr. Carpenter was discussing the sports banquet. Although we want to have like a normal sports banquet with everybody here in November. However, at this point, he's open for ideas on how to possibly do a normal one. However, with the COVID issues, he's trying to figure out how and where, and obviously with the open ideas for how to actually do that. As of right now, we're like I said, we're trying to hopefully have just a normal sports banquet. The second thing on the agenda, teams impacted by COVID. So the JV and varsity volleyball had a pause for a few days. They resumed based on the vaccination discussion that Mr. Ward was talking about earlier. The modified volleyball coaches at that point, they were out. There was no pause because it was covered, which was good. The cheer coach was out for a week but again, that was approved by a chaperone. They covered the football game for that. And modified football had been out since that past Thursday, which was the 16th of September. The third thing on the agenda was winter sports. There was some vacancies, however, I see in the personnel that they've all been fulfilled at this point in time. So that's good. And the last thing we had discussed, Mr. Smith was talking about starting the School Spirit Club, which we had approved in the agenda as well. And Mr. Carpenter was talking about creating a captain's club, pulling kids from each team and discussing leadership skills, and just getting those kids together to help revamp some of our athletics and some more support for our student athletes. And
they mentioned the arts too, right? We talked about
and the
Spirit
arts.
Club being
Yep.
for anything we can promote that has to do with our students, not just athletics.
And that was definitely getting the art program together for like making the signs and all things like that. So it was a combination of not just athletics, but you're right, Mr. Ward. Thank you for bringing that up. That's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
I'm going to make 2 quick comments. So we
Yes.
didn't talk about open gyms again today. So we are one month out from winter sports. So we talked today about having the ability to have some open gyms. I'm okay with that now, as long as the student athletes who are currently participating on our teams are participating in that, either not participating in them or participating in a safe way where they're not mixing with other people so that we don't shut down our current teams for open gyms. We want to prioritize the teams that are on the field and in the pool and on our courts and not worry about that being shut down because a student athlete was at an open gym on a Sunday or something like that. And the other was the sports banquet. In light that we had to go virtual with our open houses, we just want to be cognizant that that's a big event where we bring a lot of people in, as well as the sports banquet. So Ryan and I spoke a little about that today, along with Mike, in trying to do something where we're able to provide that experience. We don't feel we're comfortable with having everybody in one spot right now. So Ryan's working through some different ideas and possibilities for both of those things, the open gym piece and the sports banquet piece. And we're hopeful that people just understand we have to do things differently because we're still looking at goal one, right? Keep the kids in school in person 100% of the time, but be as open as possible to all these things. So the sports banquet might look different, but we want to recognize our student athletes just like we want to recognize our musicians, just like we want to recognize our actors, everybody else when the time comes. So we'll do our very best, but it likely will not look exactly as it has or did 5 years ago or 3 years ago before everything happened. Those conversations just happened today, so.
Perfect. Thank you for the update. I did have one more thing on here, just for start dates. JV and varsity sports, winter sports will start November 15th, and modified sports will start the 22nd of November. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jeff. Dan, any updates on wrestling and where we're at with that, given that we're a month out? Has Dr. Nielsen provided any additional guidance?
No, so nothing from him yet. I have been in contact with the 4 other schools in our area for which he is the provider. We're all looking to develop a cohesive plan that he would approve so that all of our student athletes could wrestle this year. It's a priority for us. We want to have something that's in pretty good shape prior to bringing it to him that we've all agreed upon. I won't name off the other schools, but we've got some other schools that are inside of our league and some that are outside of our league that use him as a school physician. But we are hopeful that those kids will be on the mats safely this year. Because many student athletes or students, that's their one thing, is to be on that wrestling mat. We hate to have them miss out on that for another year, if we can do it safely.
Okay, great. Anybody have any additional questions or comments on athletics? No? And just a reminder, it is homecoming week, so hopefully see folks Saturday or at other homecoming events throughout the week. And it sounds like we've been able to make some adjustments where, again, maybe it doesn't look like a traditional homecoming week, but to Mr. Ward's point earlier, trying to do as many events that are able to, meet the district's 3 goals of, in class all the time and, trying to look as normal as possible when we can. So looking forward to seeing all the great stuff that the team does this week. All right, thank you, Jeff. With that, we're going to transition over to audit. I'll turn it over to Crystal for our audit update.
Thank you, Ben. So we have actually 3 treasurer's reports, June, July, and August to review this month. A little bit of a delay in getting them due to the audit that was ongoing. The business and financial team's been working really hard on that. But I think we're close to being done, so that's good news. So I'll start with June. We had 1.5 million in receipts and about 6.4 in disbursements, leaving a balance in the general fund of about 2.2 million and a total cash of 3.9 million. It's June, July. Is it okay to just go through all of them and then approve? Is that okay? So then for the month of July, we had almost 1.2 in receipts and 1.7 in disbursements, leaving a balance in the general fund of almost 1.6 million and total cash of 3 million. And then in August, we had 1 million in receipts and 2 million in disbursements, with a balance of the general fund of 570,000 and total cash of about 2 million. Excuse me. So the balances in August in the general fund are a little lower than we're probably used to seeing. That's kind of just, I guess, due to timing. September is usually a bigger month to get aid payments and stuff in. So Nothing to be concerned about there. Any questions on treasurer's reports?
No?
Okay. The monthly bills were also in your board packets. Did anyone have any questions on those? Okay. I think I will turn it over to Dan and Kevin for the audit update.
So I'd like to talk about, I'd like to add that to the contract negotiations and executive session to have. So the update is that we do not have an audit to present to the board this evening. And then I would hope that the auditor would have been here for the October meeting to present the audit to you.
Okay.
Does that sound like the appropriate way to say things?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. I guess just one other thing to add on audit. We did have some preliminary discussions on developing a capital reserve account, which we've kind of discussed a little bit here and there in passing. So I think we're going to try to address that at next month's meeting to help us prepare for what we have coming down the road financially as we make some capital investments in building projects and stuff moving forward. So that's something that we'll kind of discuss, I think, more thoroughly next month, and then maybe have something to present on that.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Anybody have any questions or comments on audit? Mr. Ward, Mr. Pluntz, anything to add, or? No? Okay. If there's no additional commentary, I would entertain a motion to approve the June, July, and August treasurer's reports.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Heidi. All those in favor? Aye. Don't know if I heard any ayes down there. Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure I can't hear from that far, so we don't have that many people here, so I wanted to make sure we had a majority. Okay, next up we have transportation. Dr. Steele's not able to be here tonight. This looks like a pretty standard transportation update. The one thing I'll call out in his absence is you will see that a number of, another 10 bus units were presented for inspection. There was a late substitute bus that was presented as an inspection, and unfortunately, that bus did fail inspection. However, we're at 48 out of 49 buses for the year passing the DOT inspections with a 97, just about a 98% success rate, which is pretty much world-class in the DOT world. So hats off to our transportation team. We never want to see failures, obviously, but I think if they maintain that percentage, that would be a record for the school district if they could stay at 98% for the year. So again, great work there. Mr. Ward mentioned this earlier. There's some call-outs in here also about manpower and being down drivers. That's a trend not only with bus drivers, but DOT drivers across the United States. There's a driver shortage in just about any industry. So those are the big things I think to call out. You also see that the third bus that was purchased this year has also arrived and is fully in service. So Mr. Ward, anything you want to add to that transportation update that the group should know about?
Yeah, just that one bus that failed was repaired immediately and passed immediately thereafter. It was one brake cylinder in there, so it wasn't out of commission for longer than the half hour it took to make that repair.
Great, thank you. Any questions on transportation or comments? No? Okay. Buildings and grounds did not meet this month. There wasn't much for an agenda, but it does look like there's been an additional request for the disposal of a Ford bus that I think came in probably post us canceling our meeting. So these are pretty standard. We see these often. Does the group have any questions about the disposal of this bus? I'm assuming that it's fully out of service, and it's one of the items that has been passed down throughout the district and now is only available for salvage. Is that correct?
Will not pass inspection.
Yeah.
It's time for it to go.
Yep. Okay. Any questions on that? Again, we've seen these come through over time. The team does a great job, again, of trying to, once they're no longer worthy to carry students, they then become buses that are used in-house to run, mail and different things back and forth. So the team does a great job of getting as much mileage out of these vehicles as possible. So if there's no additional comments, I would entertain a motion to approve the disposal of the 2005 Ford bus with the VIN number that's listed on your agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. I think I heard second by Amanda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. That will carry as well. And I'm going to next turn it over to Amanda for a policy update.
You guys can see there's only a couple policies in there. One of them is maternity, paternity, that we are still kind of tweaking and gathering data on. So that's there for a first read. And then you'll see policy 6160, professional growth and staff development. There's a whole bunch of versions of that. The easiest one to look through and read and see the one change that we made to it is the last one there, C, number 3, clean with edits for approval. And you'll just see there's one red line in there that talks about professional development that people are allowed to take, and it says that if they want to take something that is not in their current field, but could potentially be, I'm probably butchering this, but be something that would further their career within the district, that upon superintendent approval, they could take that course. So that's really, it's one sentence in red that we have added to that. But again, it's just for a first read, so you guys can get your eyes on it. And then we're still trying to nail down a date where all of the people on policy committee can be present to go over that DEI policy. And that's it.
Thank you, Amanda. So, and just if it's not obvious for the group, this 6160 revision that Amanda mentioned, these red lines, or I'm sorry, the summary of changes and then the one change that we made are recommendations from Erie One BOCES, which is our policy service, and it's as a result of, I believe, updated guidance from NICET regarding professional development. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's why you're seeing those changes come through now. It's not something that Dan and Mike cooked up and thought that this would be a good policy to change. It's a policy change that's being made across the state based off new standards for professional development. So those are in there for first read, as Amanda mentioned, and then hopefully we'll have the 6160 and the maternity paternity leave set for second read next month. So nice job. Thank you. Any additional questions for Amanda or the policy team? No. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. The agenda says there's a motion required, but it doesn't look like there's anything for second read, so I'm guessing that's an error. Is that correct?
We had initially put that down as a second read because the procedure here doesn't match what I was used to, where we were just adjusting a few cents, we would do a second read of the improvements. That's what that is. It's left over from that. So
Okay.
I'll take credit for that one.
Okay, no problem. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something. And last but not least, I'm going to turn it over to Heidi for our advocacy update.
Okay, I want to start off with what I missed last month. Crystal was able to go to the Women in Trades exhibit at the Washington County Fairgrounds, and I was hoping that she would just report out since she was there.
Yeah, sure. So it was a really great event. It was well attended, I would say. Dan was also there. So there were several school superintendents. There was a lot of BOCES staff there, a lot of former students or current students that had gone through kind of trade-based program within BOCES, CTE programs. So it was really great. Assemblywoman Carrie Warner spoke. There was another superintendent spoke. So there's just a lot of really good people in the room and some very engaging discussion. Kind of the main themes that they highlighted were, the economic earning potential that exists within the trades and, also the shortage of people to fill those positions and how women really should be encouraged to kind of go into those fields. They certainly, obviously, women have a lot of skills and talents to add, and there's a lot of, again, earning potential there and a lot of needs. So that was kind of the main themes that they highlighted. And BOCES was, I think it was more a conversation thing to try to get people aware and to try to get pushing women to enter and all students to enter into these trade fields. So they're certainly welcome, or they were encouraging people if they had ideas in the ways they could partner with BOCES to further this initiative in their district to kind of reach out. So they were very open to working with districts there. So it was just a really good, it was a lot of good conversation, and it's too bad there wasn't I don't know that there was many guidance counselors there, and so I think that's kind of the next step, right, in my mind anyway, is to encourage kids to go into those fields. So Dan, you have any?
Yeah, if I can jump this, so Since then, I had a follow-up with the gentleman and lady from Curtis Lumber, as well as a follow-up with the lady from the Fort Miller Group. So, and I shared that with the high school admin team, so with Mr. Benefield, Dr. Bishop, and Mrs. Hogan, and for them to share back with the counseling team. So that meeting happened with me with the high school team last week. BOCES also has another event coming for women in the trades, and they've asked school districts to identify young ladies who might be interested in going and doing some exposure to programs at the local BOCES. So that's also an item that I shared with the high school team. So we're trying to carry on that momentum. Again, the earning potential, it was great to hear from some of the women who have a career in the trades and the earning potential that they're recognizing and realizing. And again, we need a lot of people in the trades. Anything we can do that provides an employment opportunity for our students, whether it be males or females, coming out of high school, I think we need to really look at that seriously. And that's the message I shared with the high school team when we met. So more to come on that. They'll do internships at Curtis Lumber. They'll come here and talk to groups of students. So I'm hoping that we can really build some steam with that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you both. So moving on down the list, next Monday is our community collaborative meeting. I think, are we aiming for that to be mostly in person and video for anybody who can't make it in person?
Sorry,
are we aiming for it to be in person, or are we going to do virtual again?
We can do it. We can do it whatever works for the group. I'm good either way.
Okay.
I think those conversations with the people that we're bringing on board are better in person, but right now it's better to have that conversation than just a conversation.
Right on.
For another month or 6 weeks.
So that'll be coming up on Monday and might be a mix. And then Dan was talking about how this Thursday is the ASBA dinner, and Amanda and Tim and I think, are planning on going. And I was going to mention the food drive, but Dan already did. We also had a talk in audit committee about whether or not the
School Board Association.
Enrollment fee, yes, thank
Okay.
you. The enrollment fee to the Rural School Board Association was prohibitive, or if we had the money. We do have it in the budget because the in-person NISBA conference was canceled, so we sent an email around, and it seemed to me we had consensus that we will join that. And then Dan, do you want to talk about, you were going to meet with the other area superintendents through BOCES. Did you want to talk about your legislative priorities?
Yep, so working through the priorities, which I'm guessing every year, some folks have been on the board for a while, have seen those come through. So we're working through those, and what I want to say is that we've been, sorry, I'm talking one way, not the other way. We've been very successful at having our priorities picked up by legislators and having them passed through into state budgets over the last several years. So when we talked about what we're focusing on this year, we're looking at probably narrowing it down to 2 or 3 items. We also know that COVID and federal funding are 2 things that people want to hear more about, how we spent those monies first. One of the biggest ones that we're looking at is the cap on BOCES reimbursement aid for students who go into CTE at $30,000 for the instructor. We all know that a teacher in the CTE program at BOCES, the average salary is well above $30,000. I think the number they've shared is closer to $70,000. But we're only getting aid on that first $30,000, which means we're paying for a program, in essence, that costs $70,000, and we're getting aid on $30,000. We'd like to see that number go up. That number's been in place for the better part of 20 years. We'd like to see a cost adjustment on that. We're also asking for the foundation aid formula to be fully funded. We ask for that every single year. We're just trying to make sure that cuts don't occur that are going to injure us financially. But we don't have a lot of big asks this year. One of the ones that was on the list last year was a small group health insurance, which doesn't affect our school district, but affects a lot of our neighboring school districts. So that usually makes the list. That was approved, and that approval that extended it lasts through this legislative year. So we've kind of said, let the legislators have a rest on that one, although likely that's going to come back up next year or the year after to make sure that's approved, so that as a consortium, even though we don't participate in the consortium, our neighbors need that, and we need to work with our neighbors to advocate for things they need, so that when we need something, they'll help us advocate. So you'll see a list coming up. Probably by next month, I'll have the draft list. And the other piece will be the legislative breakfast. That's going to be a virtual event again this year. But that'll be attending. I think I sent you a link last week when it came out. So it's a great opportunity to have the legislators see us, hear from us. And last year we started having the students have a role in that. So that's going to happen again this year. That's our plan anyways, for the large group to have students have a role in that again. So I'm hoping to get to be the person who interacts with the students for that portion. That was a great experience for me last year. So that's where we're at right now.
Perfect, thank you. Next on the list is, sadly, but not unexpectedly, the in-person convention was canceled for NYSBA. And how that relates to us is now we don't have to pay for it, but also the annual business meeting and the voting delegates is happening, and that's part of the NYSBA conference every year. NYSBA recommends that every board that is represented by NYSBA, so every board that pays to be a member of NYSBA, has one vote for the business meeting as a delegate. And so they recommend that you ask someone from your board. It's usually the president or the advocacy liaison. I don't feel well versed enough in what they're talking about to make a vote this year, but I'm going to be watching virtually. That's on Monday the 18th at 4 p.m. And so I don't know if anybody else feels comfortable with what they're voting on to vote. Reach out and let me know, but I'm going to take a look this year and see kind of what the process is for the voting, and then perhaps next year Ben or I will discuss how to go about that so that we are represented by NYSBA in their legislative priorities.
Heidi, I would just challenge you that I think you're more than equipped to vote in that. You are as knowledgeable about advocacy efforts, not only for our district, but kind of across the state, as any board member I've come across. And if you're going to be watching and we're paying for the service, I would fully encourage you to vote. And if we need to take action to nominate you, I'm happy to entertain a motion to do so. But if you're not comfortable, then I can certainly understand that as well. But I think in your role, it makes sense for you to, participate and represent the district, and I think we're in capable hands if you feel comfortable in doing so.
Okay. If that's the case, we just need to let them know. I think tomorrow is the deadline.
Okay, great. Do we need a formal motion to do so?
We do not.
Okay. Anybody have any objections to Heidi representing us? She is our advocacy liaison, and again, I think from continuity of work, I think it only makes sense that you represent the district.
Okay.
So do you need to let them know, Heidi, or Kelly and I need to do something to let them know that you're going to be our voting delegate?
I will I think it's Diane Grasso know.
Okay.
I can let her know.
If you need our help, just
I sure
give us a
will.
call.
Okay, and then, just one second. And so then in early October, the state senate took testimony from NYSBA on school spending. And so I just wanted to let you guys know NYSBA answered 4 basic questions, and it was addressed to the Education Committee, the New York City Education Committee, and the Budget and Revenue Committee. And the questions were, how have districts engaged school communities in planning the use for the funds? Not just the federal stimulus allocated funds, but also the increases in foundation aid. They also had to answer questions about how the funds were applied to meet specific student needs, what new or enhanced programs were implemented for struggling students, struggling in a variety of different ways, and also how the districts are going to assess the impact of the program vis-a-vis the money that was spent on the program. How are we measuring those, and how is information being transferred to parents? So already accountability for that funding is on the main stage. So it sounds like we're adding a lot of extracurriculars and a lot of extra groups, and so they're going to be asking questions for everybody in the state about, is this money well spent? How did you spend it? And what were the implications from that? And then, I think that's all we have for advocacy, unless I forgot anything.
No, nice update. Anybody have any additional questions or comments for Heidi?
I have a quick question. On the NISBA conference cancellation, did it also in the note mention, is it going to be, is there a virtual option now, and is that at no cost? Did I make that up? Or is that just
That's correct. It's a scaled down, there's a virtual option to participate, and it is free. Everything I've seen has said it's free.
So if, is there a registration for that, or are they going to send out, I think maybe they didn't have the information quite yet. Will there be an agenda and stuff where we can?
I think they're going to email, to the board, the school board member list, is my understanding.
If I see something, I can certainly share it out to the
Okay,
group as well.
that'd be great.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments for Heidi? Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ward. We have two items for new business. The first one being shared decision-making plan approval, and I'm going to ask him to walk us through the updates here.
Yep, so the shared decision-making plan, it's in your packets. Spent some time in August, really shortly after I started meeting with Terry Onofrio, as well as Jen French. Sorry, I know her maiden name, so I didn't want to, that's what stuck in my head. And really, I didn't know a lot about the plan. Shared decision-making plans in a lot of school districts have morphed into something a little bit different. Although this plan is a plan that's been here for quite a while. They made small changes to it. We are having some conversations about what the membership looks like, if the membership works for what we're trying to do these days. After talking with Mrs. Onofrio last week, we feel like we're in a good spot with the membership, although we are looking to do some pulse checks, both from the Teachers Association side and from the administrative side, to make sure that we feel like the building teams, all the way up to the shared decision-making team, are meeting the goals of this document. It's the truest sense across all buildings. So we'll be continuing to work through that, but there's not huge changes to this. Again, they are just looking for us to start using it more consistently. At least that's the Teachers Association point on this. They're concerned that over the last couple of years where we've had COVID in the way, that things have gotten away from standard operating procedure and using this document and using the BTs and the shared decision-making teams to really focus on the district schools and to try to move those schools forward as a collaborative team. So more conversations to come, but there's nothing earth-shattering that's changed in there. I would just say that there are some things we're talking about possibly changing for next year, or if we find something that isn't working well as we get into the middle of the year, you may hear me come back and talk, well, here's something that came up to the group from either the Teachers Association or any of the other groups that participate in the shared decision-making plan. So that's where we are. If there's any specifics, I'm happy to do my best to address them. Again, it's a new document for me. I haven't seen it actually operate yet, but I'm excited to do so. The one thing I would say is that previously, somebody else had been asked to run that. I'm actually going to take the district's role as the leader for this. Justine Miles has been asked to do it the last few years. Before that, the assistant superintendent to do that as opposed to the superintendent. So try to get this thing up and running in an effective manner. I'm going to step in and be the district's liaison for this directly.
Dan, the only highlighted change I saw was an e-ballot. Is that true? Is that the only change to this document?
Yeah, they're asking to do e-ballots, and that's a function of the world that we decided we found out we must live in. That's how you're going to see this differently.
Okay.
Although a couple conversations about membership and how membership is determined, but nothing there has changed.
Okay, great. Okay, you've heard Mr. Ward's recommendation. Any questions or comments?
Just a quick question. So I know you had said that things are maybe not, that there's been some changes or whatnot. So are the building teams currently meeting regularly, and how often are they?
So the building teams are up and running. They're up and running. We had a question come from this group asking if we had parent representatives on each one. The answer to that, I don't know if everybody is up on the email, the answer to that is yes. And then we have a specific grade level and also have the student representative. The answer to that was yes. But they are up and going. So there's a schedule. I know for a certain intermediate school, I had a meeting last week. I don't have the schedule committed to that week, but people are up and running on a normal schedule.
Thank you.
How are parent representatives chosen to be on BT?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The same question that I had to ask. So it seems that maybe, let me say it this way. We haven't experienced, at least from the feedback I got, parents knocking down the door to be a part of this. That being said, when we're looking for representatives, maybe we can do a better job in trying to solicit them. So I think you're a parent member this year, Mrs. Worling, right, in the IS. So you were, that meeting was last week, I got that right. So we do have principals who are looking for new
Great.
people. We have some members who have been on there for a while, and normally if they're looking to stay on, they do stay on. But we have been looking for folks. So as recent as 2 weeks ago, high school was looking for a new parent rep, and they found someone. So Heidi.
I believe we actually found Mrs. Borlang by posting it on social media that we were looking for someone for the intermediate building. And in an unprecedented circumstance, we had more than one parent reach out and want to be parent reps on BT. So maybe we could leverage social media in the cases that we don't have someone, because then we get great people who don't even know maybe that it is even a position that exists.
And I also heard through the PTSA, sometimes those positions are solicited too, as well. So yeah, good point. To my knowledge, right now, we're full, based on meeting.
That's awesome.
Asking today, I had a meeting with all the principals around the table. But I'm happy if we can, because that was one of the things that actually came up in the conversations about this plan is whose responsibility is to make sure that team is full. And it was, somebody said, that's a great question. Because normally that responsibility has been falling on the district, I guess. And some of the associations are like, well, you're right. Should that always be your responsibility? So it's a good talking point. But again, the plan hasn't changed, but there's a talking point that's going to be bounced around a little bit this year for sure.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments on, on the BT updates? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the updates to the shared decision-making plan.
So,
Thank you, Amanda, seconded by Heidi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great, that will carry. And there's also an additional field trip request here that looks pretty straightforward and less complex than the one that we reviewed a month or two ago, but I'll ask Mr. Ward to just highlight anything the group needs to know here.
Yeah, so this one is, if I got it correct, is June? So this is one we're approving for the end of the year. Obviously, if the world does something that we can't understand or is more complex than we have the situation right now, we'll have to revisit this. We're just looking to let them make their plans to go on this trip in hopes that everything is going to work out for them when we get there.
Anybody have any questions on this field trip request? Again, it's pretty straightforward, and I think something that they do annually in the middle school, I believe. Okay, if there is none, I would entertain a motion to approve, given that it's obviously safe to do so in June. Thank you, Amanda. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Crystal. All those in favor? Aye. Aye, great, that will carry as well. I'm sorry, I missed this. There is a third item, a disposal of textbooks request as well. I can ask Dan to take us through this as well. Again, we see these fairly often, and we've talked about textbooks, unfortunately, being less and less valuable in the open market as they become outdated quickly, but I'll ask Dan to give us an update.
Actually came in today from the intermediate school, so there's some books that are well beyond their useful life. As usual, we'll put them out to see if somebody will purchase them. The likelihood of that happening is lower and lower as each year passes by. So we do try to recoup some money from that. But again, Mr. McTagg reached out today and said that they had these. He apologized for sending it to us late, but was hoping the request could be granted so they could have the space, to be honest.
Okay. All right, so you've heard Mr. Ward's recommendation. Any questions or comments on these? No? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Crystal. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor? Okay, great. That will carry. We've already covered our superintendent's report, so that concludes our agenda for the evening. We do have an anticipated need for executive session on 3 items. The first being a collective bargaining update for our aides and assistants. The second, an update on impact bargaining from a grievance filed by the HFTA. And the third, to discuss an individual personnel issue.
Can I step in just for 1
Yeah.
second? So I do see that our auditor is here. Just We weren't sure if you were going to make it or not. Are you ready to present to our board this evening? Are we okay if we?
Oh, sure.
I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda to now let our auditor present after the fact.
So moved.
Thank you, Crystal. And a second? Thank you, Heidi. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, that will carry. Yeah, okay. Okay.
We'll see, maybe.
Do you need help?
Okay. Just gonna push them up to the left down.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, first I'll go over our report to the board. It's on the very back of the audit report. It starts on page 74. And the first few pages just kind of relate to the reader of the report, what our responsibility as auditors are and what the school district's responsibility is. And on page 76, this is where we have our comments that we want to relay to the board and the management of the school. Down towards the bottom, you have your unappropriated fund balance, and you're over the 4% that's allowed by the state. And that's on supplementary schedule number 3, which is on page...
Can we ask questions?
55.
Do you want us to hold our questions for the end or ask them as they are popping up?
If you got a question, that's fine.
And, I'm sorry, can we just get your name?
Jeff Beecher.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm sorry, we didn't get an introduction. I wasn't sure who you were.
So,
Hard to
Mr.
tell with a
Beecher,
mask.
Is it common in this time of COVID, because there were so many kids home and money not being spent?
Yeah,
physically,
a lot
that
of
people are
districts
over
have excess
4%?
funds. They're not spending money on substitute teachers, transportation, supplies.
So we're not alone in that?
No, almost all the districts that I audit are, you know, having extra cash in their budget, and it's going to carry over into the future.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So that's, the fund balance, you know, shows how we calculate that on page 55. And so you're just under 7%. So you're not super high, really, because 4% is allowed. We have some districts that are like 20%. All right, then, next page, on page 77. I just want to relate to the school district that the school lunch fund's been struggling a little bit. You had a pretty good sized loss, you have a deficit, and I think, you know, we just recommend that you hopefully have a plan to alleviate that for the future. Next, I'll go over the real basics of the statement. Won't keep you here too long. On page 1 is our auditor report. It just kind of tells you what roughly the audit is. Hudson Falls School does have a single audit, which that's required if you have over $750,000 in federal funds. And on page 3, this is MD&A. This is kind of telling the reader of the report how they came up on this statement that we'll go over in a few minutes, a statement of net position, which is on page 12. This statement's very misleading in that it brings all the district's assets and liabilities into a balance sheet. If you're in business, this is what you would call it. If you look at the very bottom, you have a negative $60 million, which is very misleading for a fund balance. We'll look at the regular fund balances in a minute. And that's because if you look up above, there's post-employment benefits payable. And what that is the actual study that's done for health insurance for current employees and retired employees. And the district has to recognize that estimated expense as liability each year. And so this is the accumulated amount at June 30th. So I really wouldn't take too much on these statements. You go to the historical statements, kind of shows you really where the district is, and that's on page 14. And on the left-hand side, you see the general fund, has a fund balance of $5.1 million. Then you have your other funds, your special aid fund, doesn't really have a fund balance, that's just grant money comes in, grant money goes out. And your school lunch fund, you can see you have a deficit. That's because we switched over to free. You didn't get a lot of aid the last few years. Your debt service fund, it's a little bit of money that's left over from financing. And then your capital project fund, that's little money that's left in from various projects. And then on page 16 is the revenues of each of these funds for the year. And at the very back, we also do an audit of the extra classroom funds, your activity funds. And those are really not reflected in the school district's financial statements anymore, so it's all strictly on its own. And that audit starts on, let's see here. On page 71, that's the audit report for that. And then the activities are on page 72, shows you the beginning balance, ending balance of all the activity funds. And that's about all I really we want to highlight. If you have any questions, I don't have a chance to read it. So if you do have any questions, feel free to call me or have Kevin give us a call if there's something that you have a question on.
Can I ask one more question, Mr.
Sure.
Chair? I don't know if this is a question for you or for Kevin. When you're talking about our lunch service at having a financial situation, is that in the corrective action plan that we're going to talk about next?
It's part of it.
Okay.
But basically, what's occurring, we have what's called CEP. That allows everybody in the district to have free lunch and free breakfast, okay? What happened during COVID, when you went back to when we were shut down, if you recall, we were transporting lunches to homes.
Yes.
And under CEP, with it being the bag-type lunch, not through our cafeterias, the reimbursements went down on those.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so we didn't have anything coming through our registers, but it was still going out. So we created a deficit there. And then also, last year when we ran, some of our cafeterias go through the lines, but other ones where people were eating in rooms were actually put in containers. That also affected us. Whereas this year, we're sending all the kids through the lines, everything's being registered, so we're bumping back up. Okay. And we've also put vending in all the buildings.
Yep.
We've taken over the vending. It's going to push those revenues back up to correct it. But that's one of our part of our corrective action plan, which I'm going to hand out in a second, because your only recommendation was the 4% above fund balance. Okay? So the corrective action plan that we have is all set then. So basically, that is part of how to help correct that. But we're also pushing back up where our revenues will exceed our expenditures moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beecher.
Does the group have any additional questions?
I guess I have one. So when we talk about that, the state's like June 30th number that they always look for to establish financial stability or whatever, I can't remember what that
Fiscal
was.
stress.
What's that?
Fiscal stress.
Yes, thank you, that one. That classification. So where is the number on page 18? It's in that position at the end of the year. Is that the number they look at?
On page 18?
Yeah. I guess that's a detail that doesn't necessarily matter, but I guess just how are we, how were we?
Well, yeah, normally, as far as fiscal distress, I know it's been a On page 18,
Net positions end of the year, right on the bottom. She's looking at this number, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's only for the scholarship funds.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, so what they would be looking at would be actually just the general fund balance. And it's kind of a fine line because they criticize you if you're over 4%. They also criticize you if you're under 3. So, it's a
It's a
tough
fine
thing.
line.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully they'll move it up. They went from 2% to 4. Maybe they'll go up to 8 or something down the road. Especially with a lot of the COVID money that's going to be coming in. It's going to be hard for districts to be under 4%.
And Crystal, the key to that fiscal stress rating that you get at the end of the year, one of the major components and where we got hit with all the points was the cash on hand on June 30th. Because they also look at what your liabilities are.
Right.
And the irony is, they don't look at what your receivables are.
Right.
People owe you, but they just look at what you owe people with your cash on hand. Over the years, that cash on hand at the end of the year has gone up dramatically. That's why we've come out of that stress category. So when you start seeing things like the fund balance is growing, you'll have more cash on hand at the end of the year. When that fund balance drops dramatically, you'll have less cash on hand at the end of the year. Very similar to a bank account.
Okay.
Any additional questions or comments from Mr. Beecher? Okay, thank you, Mr. Beecher. Do we need a motion to accept receipt of the audit? I think we've historically done that, but we do need that? Okay. So for folks watching at home, just so everybody's clear, we just got handed a 77-page document. This motion does not mean that we agree or approve of the items that are in this audit. All it is saying that we have received the official audit as required by law. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve receipt of the audit.
So moved.
Thank you, Crystal. And second?
Second.
Thank you, Heidi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. And do we also need a motion to approve the corrective action plan? So Kevin had emailed this to the group more recently. Kevin or Dan, whoever, if you don't mind, just please give the group a quick high-level summary of what this is and why they have it.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay. Basically, we discussed this audit, but for those of you that were not at audit, what this is this is a recommendation. The auditor will give us recommendations on anything that has to be handled. So this is a corrective action plan because we are in excess of the 4% fund balance. In the amount of $1,381,970. So we have to describe different ways that we are going to use that money to get into compliance with the 4% cap. And basically what this states is the district plans to remedy the fund balance moving through the 21-22 year by using the offsets to send $400,000 to the cafeteria fund, which would offset exactly what Jeff just pointed out. We would reserve $100,000 in the capital reserve, which is going to be discussed in an audit next month, as we talked about. And the remainder are the increased staffing levels that we're having this year. And these are areas that are they do not fall under federal funds or the ARP, but they're things that we needed to do to open school with the guidelines that we talked about at the beginning of the year, which was basically full capacity, kids making it as normal as possible for the kids. So we needed more supervision. We needed to separate out lunches. We had several different things that we had to do. So that's what these additional funds will be used for, is to offset those costs in this current year, which was the remaining $881,970.
Yeah, and I just have one comment. So any board members who have questions about the audit when you're going through it, those do not need to be funneled through anybody else. You all have direct access to the auditor. That's required. And maybe you've heard that before, but I just want to make sure that those questions don't have to come directly to us, because we want to make sure you have direct access, so there's no thought that Kevin or I are somehow influencing your interpretation of the audit and the information that you're receiving. So I encourage you, I'm happy to answer questions. Kevin's happy to answer questions, but certainly you should, I want to make sure publicly we say you have that direct pipeline to ask the person who looked through the documents from the district and created the audit directly.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan.
Can you share like contact information at some point in the event that we did want to? Or is it on there?
We'll get it. Real, do you mind, do you have a card by any chance?
Looks like the general office line is on page 1.
Okay.
We'll get it, well, yeah, if it's not in there, we'll get it for you so you have it.
Perfect, thank you.
And we'll mail copies of the audit to Dr. Steele, Mr. Galo, and Mr. LePan as well, so everybody has a receipt of the copy as well. Okay, so any additional questions on Dan and Kevin's recommendation for the corrective action plan for the unappropriated fund balance in excess of 4%? No? In that case, I'd entertain a motion to approve their recommendation.
So moved.
Thank you, Crystal. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor? Okay, great, that will carry. And that should conclude audit committee for the second time. All right, with that, as I teased earlier, we have no further business for regular session. We do have an anticipated need for an executive session for 3 items: a collective bargaining update for our aides and assistants negotiations, an update for a grievance and impact bargaining brought forward by HFTA, and a third item for a personnel issue that's ongoing. So with that, I would entertain a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff.
No action afterwards.
Thank you, Mike. And yeah, in addition, for our public watching at home, there's no anticipated action, so we're not going to be going back live onto our YouTube feed. Once we conclude executive session, we'll be adjourning with no additional action. So, so we had, I believe, a motion by Jeff, second by Crystal. All those in favor? Aye. Great, that will carry. Thank you, folks, for your time this evening. I appreciate all of our different guests that we had, both our teachers who came forward, Mr. Whitty, Mr. Strong, and your staff and students that came. It was great to see you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Have a great night.
See you later. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Kelly.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Oh,